Welcome to Today in Space, and welcome to our 4th of July episode for 2025. I'll be sharing some of my thoughts I've had about the world of space and how it relates to everyone, including my yearly message about freedom and independence on this American holiday. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, or your favorite podcast player, please leave us a 5-star review if you love the episode and what we're doing here on the podcast. And don't forget to check out what's new in our 3D printing lab, AG3D, at ag3d-printing.com, or at AG3D Printing on Instagram and YouTube, and on AG3D Printing Lab on TikTok. We've got some big news coming at the end of the month, so make sure you're following us there. And if you have a 3D printing project that you need help on, or if you're trying to figure out if 3D printing can help, go to ag3d-printing.com to learn more. So let's begin this week's episode. Thanks for joining us. Thoughts from an engineer. The search for mental freedom. We are living in the midst of a great change in the world for humanity and for the U.S. space program and the U.S. and just everything right now. It's crazy. The president's pick for NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman had passed the Senate committee's recommendation and was moving to a full Senate vote, only to have the nomination taken away by the same president who recommended them, and a candidate that had a long list of veteran astronauts in support from across the aisle that this was their guy. NASA's budget faces a large monetary cut in the space program's history. NASA employees have begun a strike outside NASA HQ as of this Monday, June 30th, all while war continues around the world. These are chaotic times, no doubt. And yet, it's not the first time the world has experienced chaos and flirtation with destruction. It's also not the first time NASA has had its budgets cut drastically and basically starting from scratch. And it certainly is not the first time or the last that things will feel impossible. So what can we learn from the past? What can we learn from the first Space Conundrum cycle of our first space race and its post-Apollo tumble in the Nixon era? Well, to start, if you are new or have never heard the Space Conundrum before, the Space Conundrum is a theory we have here on the podcast. It states that there is a strange correlation with increased progress in space and increased chaos in society. If we look at the first space race, we can see this phenomena unfold over some wild times. Ask anyone who was living at that time, especially those who were just kids or adults growing up at that time. I know I've had a lot of those conversations, and from a lot of them, it does feel an awful lot like those times. Lots of comparisons, especially post-Kennedy and MLK Jr. assassinations, and just in the midst of an energy crisis. This has all kind of happened before, and things just seemed to accelerate once they got started. And we find ourselves here again with things started, and we're in an accelerated period where we see insane progress in the space sector after NASA and the US invested in the private space sector, lifting up rocket launch providers, developing human-rated spacecraft for the US to have independence from Russia and sending astronauts into space, and trial running commercial lunar landers. And in the meantime, the US enters yet another war. Peace and justice are hard to find, and corruption and a lack of values-based decisions has left most with high costs and wages that just can't keep up. So, increased space progress, increased societal chaos. So on this week of Independence Day, I urge you to look back at the 1970s and search for parallels and lessons from that era. I think there are nuggets of hope and insights into what's next for us in 2025 and beyond, and there's no doubt that we are in the throes of the second space race and conundrum. Over the years, I've often shared a message about freedom and independence and my hope that every human being gets to experience that. While it's very easy to slip into doom and everything that's going on, I found something new to add to my utility belt for life. For the last decade of the podcast, I've grown a lot as a human. It's helped me become a disciplined, hardworking, goal-oriented science communicator of space, for space. There's a lot of drive, determination, grit, and ambition involved. But now I've found that gratitude, empathy, patience, and adaptability are my North Stars now. And for me, the daily practice of a gratitude journal, 3 things before I go to bed, 3 things when I wake up, has helped me develop a really powerful tool for fighting the madness of the world and for finding focus. Not only am I giving myself more grace in my own expectations and goals, but it's freeing my mind to really focus on what I need to do. So many of us, myself included, are being sucked into this chaotic black hole of the times that we live in. And those of us that can gain attitude control will have a chance at surviving and eventually thriving when we get through the other side of this. And so the kind of freedom and independence that I'm talking about this year is about your own mental freedom, your own mental independence. If you can control your mind, then you can adapt to any scenario in any situation. If you know your values, then you never worry about doing things for other people's validation, and you can focus on the things that matter to you and the world that you want to live in. And I'm not saying that any of this is easy, but I do think it's the tool we can all use to stay strong and fight for what we each believe in. And then if we all start discussing our own values and we can find common ground, instead of just trying to win another game for the team, even though that team doesn't stand for what you originally believed in, if we find that common ground, that's when we can really start making a difference. And so let me leave you with some gratitude that I have for where we are in the space industry and humanity. If you bear with me just another few seconds, let me share what I think about when I think about with gratitude and really what I've been learning in the last few months. I find that gratitude is just like a flame in a candle, right? If you can muster up enough courage to light the first candle, right, just to start the progress of gratitude, then you realize you can actually, with that one candle, light an infinite amount of candles, or at least for as long as the first candle wick will last. And yeah, this does apply to lighting the candle that is a rocket ship. But really, what I'm talking about here is the metaphor that gratitude seems really hard to start, almost impossible. But when you do, you realize the potential of how many other things you can actually be grateful for. And in that moment, you gain freedom, freedom from the madness and all of the things going wrong. And you gain focus on what you actually have in front of you instead of all of the things that could possibly be the Schrodinger's cat, right? Just open the box and see what's in there. So for today, I am grateful that both Jared Isaacman and Elon Musk are no longer a part of the Trump campaign. Jared seems to be determined to help the space and aerospace industry grow in whatever way that he can. He got the bug of being NASA administrator and seems dedicated to helping however he can during these chaotic times of deep cuts to the space program. It's great that we have leaders and shepherds like Jared Isaacman that can really be a big pillar in what's going to happen next. And Elon seems to have a sour taste in his mouth from his political era and is back working on the engineering problems he is so good at solving. His teams continue to do amazing work and carry the majority of US space launches to space, and that also includes more launches to space than any other country in the world as well, yearly. And so I'm grateful that there are all these people working to keep up that crazy kind of launch cadence and to do it successfully so many times in a row. I'm also grateful for leaders from the space industry that are off influencing other industries, right? Whether it's old SpaceXers and Blue Origin employees that are starting their own companies to solve problems they care about, or astronauts like Terry Virts entering politics to make change, or the many government workers moving to the private sector, or another career entirely. These space folk will make waves wherever they go, and that's good. I'm also grateful that Europe is moving to become more independent and find its own launch capabilities and not have to rely on the US funding of NASA to keep their space program up. Just like NASA experiences the push and pull of a space program being a political football, ESA and other international partners can have their efforts stopped completely by the US deciding to cancel programs like the Mars sample return. And I think an independent and self-sufficient European space program is a good thing. And I hope they can come together with a plan to make that happen, figure out all the great things that they're doing and align it in a way that's good for Europe, which will then just be good for humanity's space program in general. I'm also grateful for countries like Japan who continue to push the boundaries by having private companies like iSpace try to start from scratch to land on the moon and make it a business, and longtime engine experts like Honda getting into the space game and successfully testing reusable rockets and landing them. Pretty amazing. I'm also grateful for SpaceX, and I know there's a lot of folks who, rightfully so, have a gripe with Elon and thus SpaceX. But what I'm grateful for is that SpaceX is also developing the only other option capable of sending humans to Mars and beyond. And with a chip on Elon's shoulder, you can bet he will continue to invest in the Starship program himself, even if the government decides not to. You know, they've hit bumps for sure, and no wonder why. It's the largest, most powerful rocket ever made, and by a large margin. If the amazing talent continues to stay and enter into the Starship ranks, then Starship has the ability to keep us moving forward in space. And if it works, then we can survive NASA taking this big financial, talent, and strategic step backwards. And if it works, we can go to the moon and Mars, and no typical presidential, Senate, congressional politics can stop or decimate it like it has for plenty of NASA projects after the space shuttle. If it works, there is a future for space and a capability that far outweighs what we've had in the past or have planned for the future right now. And that's what I'm grateful for in the space industry. But from a human and societal perspective, what I'm grateful for is that I'm starting to see people gain courage. I think people are looking for alternatives and adapting to major changes and finding a way to make it happen. We're becoming more resilient and learning to stand up for what we actually believe in and not just something that's popular in the moment. It's not everyone, and we all have our problems, believe me. But when did any generation have it all figured out? They didn't. And yet they found a way. And I believe we can do that, but only if we can find our own mental freedom. And so my wish for you is to find your freedom, fight for your own thoughts and beliefs, and continue to adapt as we go through the chaos together. We'd love to hear what you think and how you're adapting in these times. And if you work in the space industry or are in the middle of changing careers or jobs, we would love to hear from you and cheer you on. So email us at todayinspacepodcast@gmail.com. And, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Today in Space Pod, on Facebook at Today in Space Podcast, TikTok at Today in Space, YouTube at Today in Space, and El Greco on X. That's ELGR3CO. That's my personal account and where we go live. If you guys need middle of the night vibe when there's clear nights, we've got our telescope streaming live from our backyard. And those have been a lot of fun. We've had maybe like 7 clear nights this year so far. So it hasn't been a ton, but we have been able to get that out there, and I love it. I just love when a telescope works and we can plan out the whole night, and we've got some great chill music, some lo-fi, some jazz, just a smattering of stuff. So if you're up late, you're worried about the world, you're trying to dial down, maybe you've got kids and you're just up late. I've heard from so many people that even while the telescope is up and people are sleeping, it's bringing some kind of escape for people and escape by looking at the universe. So I think it's an awesome thing. It's a really cool thing we started this year. So make sure to follow us wherever you follow us online, because that's where we'll be going live. And also for more space launches, we've got Starship 10 that should happen eventually here, right? Sooner rather than later, because SpaceX is going to find another Starship and Super Heavy booster to get up and running for that 10th test. And then I would expect the 11th test to be very shortly after that. So we've got a lot of stuff in that regard happening. There's a ton of things in space that are going to continue to happen. So we have a lot to look forward to. And space progress will continue here, even amidst the chaos. So thank you for joining us and for being a part of this podcast. If you haven't reached out, we really would love to hear from you. So please do. And we just wish anyone in the US to have a great Independence Day, stay safe, have a good time with friends and family. If you're not in the US, we still wish and hope that you find your mental freedom. Because with everything going on, it is the unlock for making the most out of the times that we have. Thank you for joining us. Happy Independence Day. We hope you have a great rest of your week. Spread love, spread science, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next episode of Today in Space.